I'd like to first of all get your view. A lot has been made about the fact that there were promises made in the June meeting last year. Does this summit, do you think, will it end up with more concrete measures, more concrete proposals being taken, do you think?
Yeah, I think they're going to have something much more concrete. There's a lot of criticism, I think deservedly so, about the Singapore agreement being extremely vague. It's something what I expected that was going to be the case. I mean, we're talking about not a lot of interaction between the United States and North Korea, particularly at the leader level. I think it's going to take a while for people to try to get their on the ground to make sure what kinds of agreements they can make. So I'm expecting something a little bit more concrete. It may not be as much as a lot of people are expecting or want, but I do think there's going to be an expansion probably of this, as well as the nuclear testing moratorium. I think there's probably going to be some discussion about the end of the war. People are speculating about that. And I think there may be some mention about the military exercises where they may decide to extend the moratorium on that, I guess the stopping of those military exercises between the U.S. and South Korea.
Of course, for the US, what they absolutely want is some movement from Kim on nuclear facilities. The US Intelligence Committee said a few months ago that it did not see North Korea denuclearizing its facilities completely and still saw that as a big threat. Do you think that might play a part? Do you think there is a sense in which, Donald Trump is perhaps going to be asking for too much in this?
Well, I think I don't think North Korea is going to be giving up its nuclear weapons anytime soon. If you listen to what the intelligence agency said as well, the wording was very specific. They weren't going to give them up because they felt they were threatened. And so what that means, and because they look at the weapons as the means for their survival. So what we're trying to do here, I think what the administration is trying to do is how can they figure out a way to ensure the regime's sort of survival and that it won't be threatened. So under those circumstances, if you read carefully what the intelligence said, there is the possibility over the longer term that North Korea might be willing to give these up. And this is what this conversation is about. I don't think anyone really knows what North Korea wants. And experts have been arguing for the last Korea to be willing to give these up or not. We've had for the very first time in a generation to talk with the only person who really matters in North Korea, and that's Kim Jong-un. So it's knowable. And if we position and structure this particular deal in a way, we can find out if, in fact, North Korea is willing to give these up and under what circumstances. And then finally, whether we're willing to pay what the price is going to be for that.
Absolutely. Now, last time the two met, Donald Trump showed Kim Jong-un a movie-style trailer of what North Korea could look like if it worked closely or closer with the US. Now the meeting is set in Vietnam, the US perhaps hoping that Kim Jong-un might look around him in Vietnam and see all the American culture that's there and see a country that's thriving from closer ties with the US. Do you think that's going to be enough to persuade him on board?
I don't know if it's going to be enough to persuade him, but I do think that Vietnam was a very carefully a chosen venue. In fact, when we were figuring out back in the Clinton administration where to meet and under what circumstances, if in fact there was going to be a summit, there were different venues that we chose as well and looked at. One was Singapore because it was very much a market-driven economy, but had a fair amount of political control to some degree. Vietnam, very similar in terms of what can be done. And also, I think in a situation where enemies, Vietnam, the North Vietnamese and the United States were enemies and no longer enemies anymore. So I think this is part of the conversation that they're trying to do, that they talked about in the Singapore summit, which was trying to completely change the fundamental nature of the relationship between the United States and North Korea. Whether that's going to happen or not still remains to be seen.